Okay, so we're here in the meeting which has generally been about the Stokes Croft happening, and I'm talking to, sorry?
Theo McDonald from Trinity Road Police Station.
Okay, and the first question that I just want to ask is, on the first riot, why was it that so many police were needed?
There was a couple of reasons. One was we didn't know what the threat was inside the squad. Obviously, if you've got someone in there and somebody was seen by a police officer to be, involved in making petrol bombs, you didn't know if those petrol bombs were going to be used on the officers, so you couldn't have sent someone like my colleague and myself, dressed like this, to a house to try and tackle somebody with petrol bombs. Because all it would mean is someone chucks one on top of the cops and they're on fire. You have to go kitted up in public order equipment. Otherwise, you'd be failing your staff. You can't send individuals, police officers, into that situation without them being protected in some shape or form. And the standard form is disorder equipment that you have to be trained well in.
Okay, I think it's fair to say that the situation with the petrol bombers, who they were, getting hold of them, that was probably dealt with within a few hours, and obviously we know that riot went on till about 5-6 o'clock in the morning. So at that point, when the riot police from Wales, Wiltshire and Bristol were not needed, how come they didn't stand down from the situation? How come they continued the aggression?
Well, funny enough, with the cycle of violence that happens, i.e. the more cops you get in, the more people are attracted, and there's a cycle of violence there that always takes place in disorders. The reason that Tesco's was left unguarded, and we had a previous question on this table a second ago about it, was that was the police trying to break that cycle by retreating. But all that happened then was, people creating disorder, smashed up Tesco, started smashing up vehicles. So there was a withdrawal on a couple of occasions to try and break that cycle, which didn't work, because people just went mental.
Okay, and the last thing that I'm going to ask is, obviously, I was there on the riot, and the police were there. No, I was there filming. You can see everything that I saw.
Right, yeah.
But you could see, obviously, officers were just taking orders, going around with their lines and that sort of stuff. Now, as you would know more about this than me, those officers that were kind of pushing people, that had to use their truncheons, that had to use their riot shields, were they keeping in accordance with the original oath that they took as police officers?
It's hard to comment on individual instances about what happened. I wasn't there the first night, I don't know much about it. I was there for the second night from the neighbourhood police, and that went really well. From 9 o'clock we were allowing people to come into the road, we were allowing people to demonstrate. The flashpoint was essentially when some people decided to go into the city centre. They were stopped from doing that because obviously you can't have big crowds of people going into the city centre, joining up with perhaps another load of people who are getting drunk down the city centre. They were stopped and turned back, and that's when the bottles and stones started being thrown. I, in fact, had a bottle bounce off my leg at 11 p.m, but chose to ignore that because we were trying to maintain the peacefulness and not actually spark off another great disorder, which obviously didn't work.
Thank you.
Of the community, but what I can say is that door is definitely open. So this isn't about actually spending money on projects, and I think someone kind of it isn't only about spending money on projects. I think someone made the case, do we want to buy our way into the community? That's not the case, that's not what we're trying to do. If there are initiatives we can get involved in, as we always do when we have stores in an area, then let us know what they are, and then we'll come and talk to you and see if we can get involved. And that might be giving some of our time, it may be through training schemes, it may be through supporting charities, whatever it may be. And obviously if you don't want to work with us, in some sections don't want to, then obviously that's your right. But what I am pleased about is from speaking to people, there are a number of organisations already that we have been able to make contact with and start to look at ways of working with, and I think that's great news.
Who are those organisations?
Okay, I personally haven't spoken to them yet. They've been recommended by your councillors. If I can finish. So a number of organisations have been recommended to us by, I think, one of your councillors. I'm still waiting to hear back from another of different opportunities that we have. obviously until anything's agreed, I wouldn't want to announce, and it's up to those organisations to say whether they want to work with us. If there are any other ways we can work with the community, as we do in all our stores, then obviously I lay it out to the floor if they're let us know.
Right, okay, the next question was about you being, can you explain why you weren't transparent about coming into the community, or why did you not talk to it? Obviously this is a different area that you've come into, it's not your run-of-the-mill plop a Tesco in. Why didn't you come and talk to us about how you could possibly do it differently and explore ways of being more sensitive?
I'm not asking the questions.
Okay. I think I heard a few comments about how we came into the community, and that's certainly come up in the conversations I've had over the last couple of weeks about the planning process. I think it's been a big part of what I've heard about how the change of use happened. I think there's been a bit of misunderstanding about that, actually. We didn't own the building. We didn't own that shop when the change of use went through. That's why it wasn't in Tesco's name, because it wasn't our building and it wasn't our application. So I think anyone who says anything different wasn't aware of the facts, and I think this has kind of got ahead of steam, and it's understandably wound people up. We didn't sign the lease until after that change of use. So what I've explained to your councillors and some of the groups, clearly we're aware of the site, and we wanted to invest in the area, and we wanted to open a store for customers in this area. I'm coming to that. Just let me finish. Yeah, and I've already said publicly, I've said to your councillors, I've said to other people, yes, we're in contact, as were other retailers. So yes, we're in discussions, and that, I don't deny that. Were we the owners of that building when that change of use application went in? No, we weren't. And I think that's really important just to clarify here, because I could understand if you thought we'd bought it and then put it in someone else's name.
Right, I'm going to ask one more question, and this is probably the most contentious question you're going to get. I'm going to draw a line over this part, and all these individual people are going to be sat at the back, including you, I hope, Michael, and you can sit down and answer individual questions. Right, okay, you were on the radio apparently after the riots, and you said that the riots had nothing to do with Tesco's. How do you feel about that statement you made now? Because I think clearly they did. And I think the audience agrees that they did. So how would you respond to that now?
I don't know if they were my exact words, but I think yeah, paraphrase.
I didn't hear you, Dad.
I think what...
You said, just get it straight.
I don't think actually, I remember what you're referring to. I don't think that was actually my interview, so apologies if I said it was. But nevertheless, I think what we were trying to say is, certainly from the conversations I've had over the previous months and certainly the last couple of weeks, I haven't met one person yet who has condoned this violence that happened and the disorder, who supports the disorder. I've met lots of people who are unhappy with Tesco. I've met people who wanted to peacefully protest, and obviously that's your right, and that's their right for those people. But not one person, part of that No Tesco group that I've spoken to, or been written to by, or read about, then has supported this violence, or from the representatives of this community that I've spoken to have supported the violence. So I think when we're saying it's got nothing to do with Tesco, I think on the one hand our store was obviously boarded up and shut on that day, and the second thing was that I haven't met anyone who actually supports the violence, and so obviously the information we had from the police and community, a lot of people came in, it got ahead of steam, and I think there is a separation between the violence that happened and those people who were peacefully protesting and had every right to do so.
Right, there's just one more question that we actually forgot about that was asked very early on. Apparently there was, it was in the media that there was 3,000 people coming through your doors on the first week, and the question is that true? And where do those figures come from? Quickly.
Yes, it's true, and they came from us.
How did you get those figures?
Well, we obviously have custom accounts on the tills, so you know how many transactions you've done. So
you've done 3,000 transactions?
Yeah.
Not people?
Transactions.
Transactions. Okay.
Thank you for clarifying that.
you can't run, because if you do that, people are going to say he's not doing his job correctly. Corporate affairs and all of that. I know you've got whatever. But no, what I'm really super interested in is, how do you see this whole thing seriously moving forward?
I think it's basically doing more of this. I mean, it's absolutely important. I think there's been people here who've obviously had their views, and what we've promised to do is continue to engage with the community. You know, what I found here is people who want to talk to us, want to find ways forward, want to see how we can get involved in the community. Some people have different views, and and so I think that's the way forward, actually.
Do you think this is an opportunity for Tesco's to maybe rethink their kind of local policy strategies and become more of a camouflage rather than a sore thumb approach?
Well, no, I'm proud of the work we do in communities. I think what we're going to do through these kind of groups is explain what we do, and so people understand how they can get involved and how we can contribute. I'm going to have to run there. I'm really sorry. I'm running for time, but maybe I can come.
You're going to get stopped now.
Hi, my name's Gus Hoyt. I'm the local Green Councillor for Ashley.
And yeah, so how do you think today went, and were you happy with the answers that you received from the Tesco representatives?
Not really, no. I think we were fed the usual line which they give. They like to keep up a sort of facade of public engagement and communication, but really it's always very one way. It doesn't matter what you say to them, they already have their agenda set, and that's unchangeable in their mind, I think.
Well, you said the point about how you'd already told them that this would be a good chance for them to bow out gracefully, and I had a chance to try and speak to him.
I asked them, I didn't tell them.
Well, you asked them, and it still seems like that position where them closing or not opening isn't an option. How do you think this will play out in the end?
Well, apart from all the other reasons why it was unfortunate that we had the riots and everything here and the disturbances, that has actually played into the law and order card. So now they think, that they kind of seem that they feel themselves justified to stay open because they're showing that you mustn't give in to violence and all that sort of thing. And to be honest, whether it's just intimidation of staff or intimidation of customers by security guards, I think it will just escalate into more violence. I brought the issue of public safety to Michael in one of our meetings, and he said that they're going to get around that issue by putting big shutters on the outside of the building. So yet another fortress on our streets, and I don't think he was really understanding what my point of public safety. It includes more than staff. Though of course it includes staff as well.
And the last thing that I wanted to ask is, as a new elected member inside of the council and into that whole state of affairs, how are you feeling in terms of the actual change that you can make from the inside? Are you optimistic about the sort of change that you can bring, or are you finding it harder than you initially thought?
I'd say the first few days were incredibly difficult because we didn't even have an office or a telephone, but no, we're really running now, and I'm actually hugely optimistic. I'm in a party of 2 members, and it's amazing what we've already achieved regarding green spaces, public transport and English for speakers of another language. Hopefully now Barbara, Jank and the rest of council are actually going to tackle these cuts. So I think it's onwards and upwards from here.
Okay, nice one, thank you.